shalom.
God say shalom.
Shalom, my lady.
Shalom, my lady.
Yaakov Israel.
Yaakov Israel. God say shalom.
Yes, sir. We'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for joining our weekly Torah study. This week's Torah study is a special treat. Bereshit, in the beginning. We join thousands of synagogues across the world as we turn the Torah scroll to the very first Torah portion, Bereshit. We hope and pray for your family as we begin this Torah reading cycle for this year, that you gain a deeper understanding, greater knowledge, and maybe perhaps in this Torah study or in the coming Torah studies, some jewels that maybe something new you've never considered, or perhaps maybe an insightful perspective. Bereshit, Genesis 1:1. Bereshit, bara Elohim et hashamayim, ve'et haaretz. Ve'haaretz hata tohu vavohu vokeshet al pnei tihom ve'ruach Elohim merakathet al pnei hamayim. In the beginning of Elohim's creating the heavens and the earth, when the earth was astonishingly empty with darkness upon the surface of the deep, the divine presence hovered upon the surface of the waters. Have you ever considered, and perhaps maybe you have, when the waters were created? You know, if we take a look at the word hashamayim in the Hebrew, hashamayim, heavens, plural. But inside of that Hebrew word, you have mayim, which is waters, in the plural. Very interesting. So when were the waters created in this aspect? And I hope in this Torah portion, there's some things that you gain, you understand that maybe you've never considered. And you understand the Hebraic language as well as the Hebraic thought. Now, if we consider the very first few words, Bereshit, in the beginning, bara, created. And this creative power that is spoken of here, Elohim, the plurality of God, and we will have some interesting dialogue and perspective on the plurality of God. Et. Now, et, what is et? The Hebrew letters, Aleph, the very first letter, and Tav, the 22nd letter. The Hebrew language consists of 22 consonants. And so Aleph Tav, which those who are linguistic scholars and Hebraic scholars and understand the Hebraic language say it's a direct object pointer, but et. And so in the beginning, created, the majesty, the plurality of the infinite eternal one created Aleph Tav, the first Hebrew letter and the very last Hebrew letter. He spoke into creation. He spoke it into creation. Very interesting in our opening prayers, the Baruch She'amar. And when we say this in our opening prayers, it says, "Blessed is he who spoke and the world came into being." Let's take a look at that in Psalms Telehim 33, verse 6. Now, your page nation may be different, and I would encourage you to find a Hebraic Bible. Psalms 33, verse 6. By the word of Hashem, the heavens, plural, were made, and by the breath of his mouth, all their host. Ooh, host. Wow. And we'll talk about that as well. And I want to encourage you, what things are you speaking into creation? What things are you speaking into creation? What are you creating? Also, it's very interesting what follows. It said, Elohim said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Elohim saw that the light was good. And Elohim separated between the light and the darkness. Elohim called the light day, and to the darkness he called night. Now, what is very interesting, and maybe you've considered this before, or perhaps you have not, but as we generally think, sunlight and the sun was not created until day 4. So what is this light that is present here? What is this light? I ask you to join me in Proverbs chapter 8, verse 22. Hashem made me at the beginning of his ways, before his deeds of yore. I have reigned for all time, from the beginning, from before there was the earth, when there were no depths, I was formed, when there were no pools, rich with water. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills, I was formed, when he had not yet made the earth and its environs, or the first dust of the inhabited world. When he prepared the heavens, Hashamayim, I was there. When he etched out the globe upon the face of the depths. When he strengthened the heavens above. When he fortified the well springs of the deep. When he set forth the sea, its limit, and the waters would not transgress his word. When he forged the foundations of the earth, I was his nursling. I was then his delight, every day playing before him at all times, playing in the uninhabited areas of his earth. My delights are with the sons of men. Now, if you go to the opening of chapter 8, it will say, wisdom. Wisdom was present. We'll talk further about that as well. Wisdom was present. Some interesting concepts. And I think a good biblical foundation comes from understanding the creation story in perhaps a unique or different perspective or context. Now notice here, And there was evening and there was morning. One day. Now, if you look at it in the Hebraic, it says Yom Ikad. If it said first day, it would say Yom Rishon. Why does it say Yom Ikad? Why? Why does it say Yom Ikad? Why does it say Yom Ikad? The great Rashi, Jewish philosopher, says that everything was created in potential on the first day, but the actual generating takes place on the days that follow. Keep in mind, at this time, as we know in our finite wisdom, there is no conceptualization of time. God's time is not our time. We often say things as such, but really, there is no sun, moon, and stars for what we know as time. So what Rashi states here is that perhaps everything was created on day one, and then in their perspective process of creation came into on the following days. Elohim said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it separate between water and water." So Elohim made the firmament and separated between the waters that were beneath the firmament and the waters that were above the firmament. And it was so. God called the firmament heaven, Hashamayim, and there was evening and there was morning, Yom Shini, second day. But again, on the first day, he does not call it Yom Rishon. First day, he calls it Yom Ikad. Things to consider. Let's move on. Elohim said, "Let the waters beneath the Hashamayim heaven be gathered into one area, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. Elohim called dry land earth, and to the gathering of water he called seas. And God saw that it was good. No, hold on. Why not in day two he says anything about it being good? Very interesting perspective. Elohim said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, herbage yielding seed, fruit trees yielding fruit, each after its kind, containing its own seed on the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth vegetation, herbage yielding seed after its kind, and trees yielding fruit, each containing its seed after its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, a third day. Did you ever notice? He said on day 3, good twice, but on day 2, he never said it was good. Now, there are those who perhaps consider and state that he was not finished with his creation in totality on day 2 and could not say it was good until day 3. And then he says it was good twice on day 3. And there was evening and there was morning, a third day. Also, it's very hard for some to consider the cycle of the day in its Hebraic connotation, is that the evening is the start of the day. Verse 14, as we move along. Elohim said, "Let there be luminaries." And I would encourage you to lose the word or the term luminaries as we approach day 4, because there's already light as we see. And we know that that light is wisdom. in the firmament of the heaven to separate the day and the night. And it shall serve as signs and for festivals and for days and years. And it shall serve as luminaries in the firmament of the heaven to shine upon the earth. And it was so. And Elohim made the two great luminaries, the greater luminary to dominate the day, and the lesser luminary to dominate the night, and the stars. Now, keep in mind, although we are very thankful, and throughout parts of the world, there are parts of the world that don't get a lot of daylight in certain times of the year. So we are very thankful, and those individuals who live in those regions of the globe, because they can very easily suffer from sunlight deprivation and lack of vitamin D, as well as those who have to have or who have to live in climates where there's winter, or in seasonal climates where there's 4 seasons, there's very dark days. So we're very thankful for the sun, but we do not worship any one or any other thing other than the Creator. And there was evening and there was morning. A fourth day. We're moving along. And as we move to verse 20, Elohim said, let the waters teem with teeming living creatures and fowl that fly above the earth across the expanse of the sea. I'm moving along for the brevity's sake. And he talks about the great sea giants that creep up in the water, and the winged fowl of every kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. Elohim blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and the fowl in the increase on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, a fifth day. Now, as we get to day 6, says Elohim said, let the earth bring forth living creatures, each according to its kind, animal and creeping things and beast of the land, each according to its kind. And it was so. Elohim made the beast of the earth according to its kind, and the animal according to its kind, and every creeping being of the ground according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. Now, very interesting, verse 26. And Elohim said, let us make man. Who is the us here? Who is the us here? Who is the us here? If we look at this here in verse 26, and God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And I want to encourage you, perhaps maybe we've been looking at this, or maybe we should consider it from a different perspective. I found this some years ago in some of the training materials for the children at our synagogue, and it reads as such. We are made in God's image. This does not mean that we look like God. And I think we spend so much time trying to look like God and telling the world, I'm made and wonderfully made in his image. But this provides some new insight, perhaps. It means that we can act in God's ways. And I encourage you today, what ways are you acting in God's ways, or how are you acting in God's ways? Because if you take that conceptualization, now you're operating in the image of God. But who is the us here? You also see this at Genesis 11 and 7. Come, let us go down and therefore confound their language. Who is the us? And I encourage you, if you look at the Hebrew word created, appears in the singular form. And that's why it's very important for you to understand the Hebraic language, Hebrew, as well as the Hebraic thought. If let us make man indicates a numerical plurality, although there is a plurality of the creator, it would be followed in the next verse by, and they created man in their image. It does not say that. What it is indicating here in the Hebraic, the all-inclusiveness of God's or the Creator's attributes of authority and power, the plurality of his majestic, his throne, his host, his counsel. So I encourage you as you go through the scriptures and give some thought, because there are some who will say, well, he's being assisted. Well, if we took on that concept, although he has a royal council and a host, just so we are clear in terms of this, we go to Nehemiah 9 and 6, the book of Nehemiah 9 and 6, the prophet Nehemiah. It reads on this wise: You alone, Hashem, you made the Hashamaim, the heavens, the host exalted heavens and all their legions, the earth and all that is upon it, the seas and all that is in them, and you give them all life, and all the heavenly legions bow to you. I would encourage you to look at this if you want some additional scriptures. Again, Genesis 3 and 22, 11 and 7, Isaiah 6 and 8, 1 Kings 22, verses 19 through 23, Job 15, verse 8, and Jeremiah 23 and 18. It says simply in verse 27, so Elohim created man in his image, and in the image of Elohim, he created him, male and female, he created them. So I would encourage you, I hope there's been a few jewels that maybe you see in a different perspective, some things that you can utilize. I encourage you to continue to study the weekly Torah portions with us, with your family. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to synagogue, and we will certainly be with you at any time to help you on your journey of learning more and more and more.